queued up so I can watch. I'm going to have it muted on another device.
All right. Welcome to the Backyard Professor Live. I am going to have yet another discussion with someone who really has been enjoying this book on Method Infinite. I finished a couple of podcasts today, a couple of these videos, and it is remarkable the effect that this book is having on so many of us with either Masonic roots or no Masonic roots. It appears to me that this book has just about a little bit of everything for everybody, and it's done well. So I've got on the phone with me my good friend Doug Vincent. He's a patron. He watches my channel. He contributes to the channel. He told me he bought this book because of my recommendation. He has been reading it. He's not all the way through it yet, but hey, you're echoing, Doug. Turn that thing off.
I just did. Sorry.
No, it's no big deal. So, Doug, we are on live.
Oh, boy.
How are you feeling? Yeah. We are on the show, pal. This is the real McCoy. Woohoo!
I'm feeling okay, but it's a little bit intimidating coming along behind Nick Tursky.
Yeah. And you know, when I scheduled you, I never thought about that. I apologize, but I would have been just as scared. Okay. So no, it's not a big worry. What we're doing is we're celebrating this book and having fun with it and enjoying it, and just this book is for everybody. Wouldn't you think?
Yeah, it is. This is what I would term an eye opener. This book, because you're going to learn. I don't care who you are. You're going to learn something new. I certainly didn't know that much about Masonry going into this, and they have a wonderful little introductory chapter on, the history of Masonry and kind of the evolution of it, and some of the things that were going on with Masonry around the time of Joseph Smith. So, that helped me because, being somebody who doesn't really know much about it.
Yeah.
I think the biggest shock in there for me was that Masonry was actually started out as a Christian organization. It was based on a lot of Christian principles and history. A lot of the allegorical stories and lore of Masonry includes biblical patriarchs and things like that. And so early Masonry was very Christian, but then just before Joseph Smith's family kind of entered the scene, it started shifting to become sort of neutral as far as, which God you believed in. You just basically needed to believe in a God. And
yeah.
And so that it was kind of going through this transition when Joseph Smith was alive, where they were jettisoning the strictly Christian aspects of it and making it a little more generic. And there were people who were all upset about that, and other people who were all for it. One of the people all for it was Joseph Smith's family. His grandfather was, super anti-religion, very.
Yeah, organized religion. Wasn't his dad's brother the one who, after Lucy Mack started going back to church, to the Methodist, and trying to get Joseph Sr. to it, his brother came in and had the Thomas Paine's book on reason and threw it at him.
Yeah.
That's a fun story.
Yeah, it was his grandfather and his great uncle, Joseph Smith.
That's right.
So that would have been Joseph Smith Sr.'s dad and uncle came in, threw Thomas Paine at him.
Hit him right in the head with reason.
Unbelievable.
Well, and this kind of helps us see where I like that, because the the tension between being religious and being a part of a bigger group, neighborly, because the times were hard anyway, was really reflected directly in Joseph Smith's family, which I thought was well
it was
demonstrated in this book. That was fun background. I loved how they started before Joseph Smith's birth and then brought it up.
Yeah,
that was cool.
It really was good and enlightening to learn a little bit about that and some of the. And I just, as I was going through it, I kept underlining little words and phrases, like the 3 degrees.
Yeah.
Things that in the church that are so familiar to us, like 3 degrees of glory, well, there are 3 degrees of masonry. All these little kind of parallels, just in some of the wording. It talks about 3 great knocks. If you've been through the temple, you know what that's talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, just all kinds of little words and phrases that I just thought, so Joseph Smith would have been familiar with this terminology and this language,
Yeah.
Because his family members did, eventually become Masons. A lot of them, his brothers, his father, we think. But that's kind of an interesting story. Originally, the Joseph Smith Sr. Evidently applied for Freemasonry, and was kind of rejected. That's the best I can think of.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, I think it is, it's like, in order to understand anybody and why they think the way they think, the more you understand about their history, the more you can piece together about what might have caused them to think that way, And so having another reference that you can go to and kind of get that information, especially, some of these things that I've never seen before, and just understand how it might influence them, and change them and shape them. One of the things that I thought was really interesting was the Smiths. They lived in Vermont, and Vermont just happened to be a super hotbed of not only Masonic influence. They had a lot of lodges, and some of the first lodges around were in Vermont. Early Vermont coinage contained Masonic symbols on it. That's how influential it was. But you also kind of had this, the Vermont was very patriotic, believed in independence and that kind of thing. And Vermont was going, yeah, that's it. Yeah. The one on the right, that's all-seeing eye right there in the middle of that coin. So you have the Smiths living in this hotbed of idealistic political leanings. Their society was very idealistic.
It was.
They were kind of going through a war, so to speak, over the boundaries of Vermont, and
the state itself. Yeah.
The state
and
itself,
it was cool to see how they it was really cool to see how the Vermonteers were really pretty serious about, we want our independence, man. And so they were very individualistic, and so it's real interesting how and Nick kind of alluded to this a little bit this morning when we were talking about the Joseph Smith Sr. at first being rejected out of the lodge, possibly because his circumstances were just not very good, and so they were worried that he wasn't going to be a good lodge member, and so someone said no. That's one possibility, like Nick was saying, And so this moving
Yeah.
around, that would also affect your psychology with not only the place you're at, but with your family, with how you're going to live your life. What about further down the road? How do we prepare for the future and all that? And it appeared to me like Joseph Sr. was really attempting to set the course so that it would be as easy as he could possibly make it. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse until Joseph arrived.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
interesting, isn't it?
That is fantastic, fascinating. One thing, I just want to read this if I could, because I thought this was really interesting. And this is from chapter 2. Let's see what page mine are. I'm on page 15. It says, historian David Hackett observed that the growing convergence of Christianity and Freemasonry around Enlightenment ideals marked the first quarter of the 19th century. Masonry avoided the extremes of both sectarianism and non-biblical rationalism, and thus it attracted ministers and members of liberal denominations such as Episcopalians, Congregationalists, and Unitarians to its leaders. Until the social unraveling of Freemasonry during the scandal known as the Morgan Affair, the fraternity served as a kind of secular priesthood.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty fascinating. So, and living today, it's hard for us to imagine what it was like in that day, but Freemasonry was widely regarded as a good organization. And you had all kinds of founding fathers that were Freemasons. In Vermont, Ethan Allen, the Green Mountain Boys, they were Freemasons. It's just like, it was considered sort of, I don't say on a par with Christianity, but it was considered good. Like Christianity is considered good.
It appears like the Christians were really all on the up and up with having it being a part of their culture and their overarching philosophy, even though they were a particular. Yeah, it's real interesting that it didn't matter which, like they said, it didn't matter whether you're liberal or conservative, Episcopalian or Congregationalist or Unitarians. And there were a lot of the people back then, especially in the American government, who were Unitarians at the time and becoming Masonic Unitarians or Masonic Episcopalians. It didn't seem to faze them like it does today. There's still all kinds of fascinating conspiracies about Freemasonry and Albert Pike and the Illuminati. They're going to take over the world, And fortunately, these guys didn't delve into a lot of that stuff. A lot of it's really rather silly, but yeah.
Exactly. Another really important thing there in Vermont was the Nathaniel Wood Group. Okay.
Yeah, that was fun to read, wasn't it? That's kind of cool American history also. You kind of go, oh, hey.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But evidently Wood's group, they were Masons, but they had a lot of mystical beliefs, and they believed in using divining rods to discern the will of God.
Yeah.
Okay? And so they received revelations, and you're
through
thinking,
that rod.
This sounds kind of Mormonish right here, So they also made excavations. They did treasure digging, which of course figured really prominently in Joseph Smith's family.
Absolutely.
And one of the Masonic legends that caused them to do this is that there's a legend that there's a gold plate of Enoch. It's this golden plate that was buried, and it contained the keyword, the Mason's secret word, which was the name of God, and evidently had it's supposed to have amazing powers. There you go.
This is out of Quinn's Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview. But there's some various pictures of people using rods in that particular realm and area with the philosophy. This wasn't just one or two odd people out. Apparently, it was a cultural item.
Yeah,
it was something, and it wasn't only in or involved in a true Christian denomination. Didn't matter what religion you were using rods. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And then that reminded us of that. I know you're heading here. Sorry to steal your thunder, but I remember this when I was a missionary, the particular edition of the Doctrine and Covenants I took with me on my mission, 1979 to 81. It still had that description in, I can't remember if it was section 6, something like that, where Oliver Cowdery was to use his rod to receive revelation. That was in the Doctrine and Covenants, and they do mention that in this Method Infinite.
Yeah, and they changed the word so that it doesn't say rod.
Yeah, they did. They call it gift. Yeah, which it was. However, they're hiding something. They're hiding that particular aspect of it.
So. Yeah, they're trying to deflect there.
Yep.
But this thing with Woods, evidently, Joseph Smith Sr. and William Cowdery, who was the father of Oliver Cowdery, were said to have been involved in the Nathaniel Woods group. And that kind of is another little eye opener there. It's like, oh wait, now we're really getting into something here. You know, when Senior and Oliver Cowdery's dad, they're together on it. So there's sort of this nepotism in this whole thing.
Not sort of.
Yeah.
It was a family hand-down.
Which continues to this day, I might say, in the church. Let's see. So they called it. Evidently, Woods predicted the return of Christ and the apocalypse. He made the mistake of giving a date.
Yeah.
And that date came and passed, and
just like Miller,
everybody lost faith. Yeah.
Yep.
So they call that the Woods scrape. That's what they call that whole incident there. So
they don't have a picture. He has a. Who is this guy? Oh, this is Ethan Allen. Oh, yeah, this was the leader of the Vermont Green Mountain Boys.
Yeah, the Green Mountain Boys. Bunch of Masons right there. Super famous in American history.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's just all over me. Masonry is just all over. That particular milieu, if you want to call it that.
And physical.
Woods. Yeah. Another interesting thing related to Woods, though, is that after that thing kind of broke up, the group kind of broke up, many of them migrated to upstate New York, where the Smiths would later relocate.
In fact, what page are you on? Are you still looking in the book?
I'm on page 20 up at the top there.
Oh, okay. I was on 19 at the bottom, so I see where you're getting at. Yeah. Keep going. Keep going. This is good stuff. Read on the bottom of page 19, that last paragraph. That's really fascinating.
Okay.
What some of Joseph's neighbors thought.
Oh yeah. This whole section is really good right here. Okay, so here we go. Whether or not the Smiths and the Cowderys participated personally in the Nathaniel Wood group, the Woods brand of Masonic religious ardor was thought by contemporaries to have been replicated in early Mormonism.
Yeah.
Methodist circuit writer Laban Clark recalled about the year 1840, he had heard two Mormon preachers in Connecticut who held to the same or much the same doctrines which the Woods did in Milton. Clark firmly testified, I have no doubt that their movement gave origin to the Mormons.
I have no doubt their movement gave origin to the Mormons. They knew Joseph Sr. And of course, he was out there ranting and raving about his new son, whom was going to be a next prophet.
right, had been born with the placenta wrapped on his head, and
Yeah,
evidently he was going to be
and
a
that
seer.
Nick
Yeah,
didn't say it in the footnote, but the footnote in that book referred to. I'm trying to find. I can't find that particular spot, but the call, the placenta, like that, they said in Joseph Smith's area, there was the theme of what made Noah so extra righteous as a prophet to be chosen is because, like Moses, he was born with what they called a veil over his face. And that was that
veil.
call. And that's why Joseph Sr. was so astonished when Joseph had that call. Yes, it's a natural situation, a natural event, but it immediately, I mean, on the moment Joseph Smith was born, in his dad's eyes and his mom's, it put him right in line with the biblical prophets and patriarchs, Noah and Moses included. Really interesting about the thought processes in the biblical themes as well as the parallels with the Masonic themes, because they were also the Masons. George Oliver in his Antiquities was talking about the importance of the Master Masons and Grandmaster Masons in the patriarchs. Quite a tie-in, both angles.
Right.
Yeah, that was
The
fun.
other thing interesting, you just since we're talking about Joseph Smith's birth, is his older brother Hiram had been named after, potentially, we don't know for sure, of course, but it kind of makes sense, Hiram Abiff, who's the central figure in the Masonic,
the Royal Arch.
The Royal Arch story. He's the hero, basically, of that story. And that had become a super popular name in Vermont because there were so many Masons in Vermont. I think it's interesting, though. So Joseph is born, and Joseph Smith names him after himself. Joseph Smith Sr. names him after himself, and Joseph Smith Sr. had been called a dreamer of dreams. So I think that this was, like you said, he saw a seer born into his family, and he named him after himself. Because Joseph Smith Sr. was evidently somewhat famous for being a dreamer of dreams.
Well, yes. And he worked that rod, and he was involved with a group of rodsmen who also claimed one aspect of the rod working was receiving direct revelations from deities. So, he would want Joseph to, now that Joseph was born with the veil on his head, with the veil on his face, he would definitely want Joseph to continue in that tradition.
Absolutely. So from father to son, boom, right there. So what this is all kind of leading up to, in my mind, is that you literally have in their environment, in their society, in their religion, in their the practices, the beliefs, the legends, everything. They're literally swimming in this soup that's a mix of Christianity, folk magic, and Masonry. And it's these three things are just swirling all around them. It's like they're in this big pot of soup made up of these three ingredients. And in the church, they always leave out one of those ingredients. Well, they actually leave out two of them. In the church, they only tell you about the religious fervor.
Yeah.
But really, it was way more complicated than that.
Absolutely.
You had this folk magic thing, which, you had the Christian churches. Some of them were warring against that, trying to get people to stop believing in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You had Freemasonry and all the allegorical stories in Freemasonry, or a lot of the people in Joseph Smith's time, they took the allegorical stories and they basically believed them as if they were actual events,
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can tell that Joseph Smith believed that. He believed that.
Yeah.
Right?
He ended up with based on what research I've been doing for the last few years, especially when it came to discussing the Bayesian probability of Joseph Smith having a literal signature of Abraham on the papyri. I've did several videos on those. He ended up being much more of a literalist. It appears to me that he liked instead of recognizing the Bible as a pastiche of legends, he wanted it to be historical, and he wanted the information he was getting from his family, his friends, his neighbors, the witnesses to his work, regardless of whether it was the Book of Mormon or the Book of Abraham. It didn't matter. All of those guys were Freemasons. The theme of adding legendary material, it appears to me it wasn't in Joseph's mind. What he was doing is he was fleshing out the history, and that goes right odd for us. Come on, that's odd for us. But in his day, that is how they read, understood, lived, and utilized the legendary materials out of both movements, the Bible, Christianity, and Freemasonry. So it actually makes sense he became a literalist, doesn't it, in a way?
Yeah, he became a literalist. He really was a literalist. And the church continues to be literalist to this day. So
to an extreme, in my opinion. Yeah.
To the point where it's costing them, because
that's part of the testimony killer in so many regards, because when we actually do utilize the sciences to discover the real history of Israel, and I'm looking for it. It's my favorite book. Hold on, I'm doing one of the backyard professor things again. But when we get to the actual science, William Dever, Beyond the Text, this is on the archaeological portrait of ancient Israel, then we see that so-called reality just, it has no congruence, not only with what's written in the text, but what is interpreted through inspiration and revelation. And name whatever prophet you want. Old Testament prophet, New Testament apostle, Mormon restored prophets. None of their stuff matches the reality, because they took the literalist point of view. If you took the Freemason allegorical / legendary concept as a lesson for us, then it becomes, and this is just me, this is Backyard Professor Doctrine 101, it becomes much more meaningful and useful, just like the parables of Jesus. Nobody imagines those are literal. To literalize that part of his teaching is just insanely silly, because it destroys the whole point of it. It's not meant to be history. That's why when people read the Zohar, the Jewish spiritual material, the Kabbalah, if you'll read the Bahir or the Sefer Yetzirah or the Zohar, take you quite a few years, but you can do it. If you was to say, oh yeah, well, this is how it's literally supposed to happen and all, you get completely lost. That's why the Jews don't like you studying the esoteric materials without a teacher with you. But going literalistic, like Mormonism did, crap, they can just write stupid priesthood meeting manuals and gospel essential books and all that, and just let you read to your heart's content. They can dumb it down, which they do. They can include or exclude whatever they want, and they don't have to have an enjoyable discussion and worry about anything, because what you read is true. Nothing about what we read is true. I think the Masons have the edge up in that regard, and this is one of the new ways that it's got me thinking. This book, Method Infinite, it's got me thinking I could have to realign my whole approach to what? Reality, to history, to philosophy without question, etc., and see how it goes without being so literalistic, because that's what I was raised to believe. I mean, I went into apologetics with that mindset, and I got my butt handed to me over and over again by all of you guys in my audience. Fun stuff, though, to see the comparison contrast, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite fascinating, and you can see that we really did kind of take a left turn there when we went down that literalist route. But there we are. Let's see.
Here we go. Hey, Mormon Yeshiva makes a good point here in the comments. Ancient Israel is more closely connected to ancient Egypt than many want to admit. I think that is a real good insight. And my suspicion is, well, I mean, Uzdavinus, the guy, the new author that I'm really jumping into, really powerfully, he shows, in fact, it's in this book too, and this is this is his magnum opus right here, Philosophy as the Rite of Rebirth. And notice the Egyptian picture on the cover. That's no joke. It all starts, it goes back, it's all connected with ancient Egypt. And then by sheer fortuitous luck, papyri comes into Joseph Smith's life. That's one reason why he really felt destiny was just leading him along. Because if it didn't go to Egypt, then it wasn't valid. Uzdavinus is huge on this. He shows the tracing of the mysteries in antiquity, where the beginning is in Egypt. And let me show you this real quick. This is just one example of many. However, one of the big topics, seriously big topics in Freemasonry, is the symbolisms of the gods of the Egyptians and the light they throw on Freemasonry. Now, this is a bit older of a book on Freemasonry that I've got, but there's another one, The Stellar Theology and Masonic Astronomy, that ties in with several of the ancient Egyptian concepts of astronomy. But it begins in Egypt. It comes up through the ancient Orphics, the Kabiroi, the Greeks. It came up into the Greeks with the Eleusinian mysteries and all that jazz, then Pythagoras, then Plato, then early Christianity, then Neoplatonism, and it kept right on going up into alchemy, Hermeticism, Gnosticism in early Christianity, then alchemy in the Middle Ages, which hermetic and alchemical materials is what Pike, in his Morals and Dogma and in his Esoterica, said was where Masonry acquired its materials. Well, with all of this Mason stuff flying around him, the William Morgan affair, the battle between the spurious and the authentic Masons, the arguments back and forth, did you get to the point where they were documenting? Did you get to the point? I dropped Nicola Tursky on his head. Well, just the book. Did you get to the point yet to where they are describing how many publications, how many books, how many hundreds of newspaper articles were published, and how many thousands of meetings were being held all over the then United States on just this topic? I mean, there is no way that Joseph Smith would not have been influenced by it. You keep talking. I'm going to find that, because that was one of the impressive things for me, that the overarching tidal wave of information on Freemason, both good and bad, right in Joseph Smith's youth, while he was getting the Book of Mormon. He was acquiring the Book of Mormon when all of this noise was going on, and it went on for years.
Well, it was not just a one-time event. It was an extended thing. So just a couple of other things. Joseph's older brothers, Alvin and Hiram. There's no documented evidence of Alvin being a Mason. There's a couple of little allusions that he might have been, but definitely Hiram was a Mason. They've got his lodge records and everything, and according, even Heber C. Kimball noted that Hiram Smith received the first 3 degrees of Masonry in Ontario County, New York. Oh, boom. So
he got it. He got his in New York. Right.
And they believe that Joseph Smith Sr. also eventually got his
once he got out of Vermont.
Once he got out of Vermont. So they had blacklisted him in Vermont, and once he was out of that influence,
well, he had to be away from the Grand Lodge of all the other lodges in that particular district. And moving to Palmyra got him out of that. So then he became a Mason. That's fascinating how that works, isn't it?
Yeah. And just that just brings to mind another thing. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but
go.
The Grand Lodge concept and the other lodges is a direct correlation between stakes and wards. I mean, you couldn't get any clearer than that. I mean, that organization is definitely Masonic. Boom.
It's fascinating how they bring out so many small little interesting things that we start thinking of once we start reading this kind of material with the all-pervasiveness of Masonry, though. That's part of the fun of all of this, is discovering that stuff that. That's fun.
Yep. This is great fun stuff. Let's see.
So I take it that means you're enjoying the book.
Oh yeah. So then just after the Smiths get into New York, so they had a horrible time in Vermont. They lost all their fortune.
Yeah.
They were dirt poor for about 15 years. And
can you imagine that? 15 years being dirt poor.
That's a long time, folks.
Especially when you have kids.
Yeah. They finally got to Palmyra, and they actually did really well.
Yeah.
They the first thing that they did, now this is I've never heard of this before. Maybe I'm just not that well read, but the first thing they did is they set up a shop. They had a store in their home. It was called a pie and beer store.
Whoa, hey, maybe I need to start one of those for us.
Pie and beer.
Pie and beer. How can you beat pie and beer? Woohoo!
It wasn't beer though. It was root beer.
Oh, come on. Don't ruin the fun.
It was root beer. And evidently it was a big hit with all the kids, so they had all these sweets.
It would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so they did that. Alvin and Joseph Smith Sr. set up a cooper shop, which was a big deal. So coopers make barrels, all right, and barrels are used in shipping and storage. And guess what was coming down the countryside, just literally blocks?
A UFO?
The Smiths. No, the Erie Canal. A UFO.
Sorry. Well, you asked. I'll drink to that.
The Erie Canal, which was literally the super highway of their day,
Yeah.
And so you had all this shipping going on. So, being a cooper and having a cooper shop was a really good move. So the Smiths kind of, they had a season of more plenty. I wouldn't say plenty, but more plenty. They weren't dirt poor anymore. So that allowed them to relax and do other things, like get back to their treasure digging, which is what they did in the area of Palmyra. They went back to their treasure digging. And it's kind of in that era right there when they get out of the financial hole they were in and start doing okay. That's the time that Joseph Smith finds his first seer stone, okay, which is what his dad was wanting. His dad had prophesied that he was going to be a seer. Yeah. And he needed a seer stone.
Hey, did you catch that? Did you catch that reference when it mentioned that? And you gotta keep this in mind. One, he's young. My suspicion is he probably would have rode a horse, but that seer stone he found was 150 miles away. You remember reading that? That was astonishing. 150 miles away, and he went and got it. And then he had to dig 20, 30 feet deep to get it. I mean, that's pretty serious determination.
He had to work his way there and back because
right. Yeah, you don't travel 100. You don't travel 150 miles, not even on horseback, in faster than 3 days that I'm aware of.
And
that's one direction.
America.
That's frontier America. Yeah.
Yeah. So the roads were, if there was any, they were pretty bad. Yep. And there were dangers. Wild animals. There were still Indians, Native Americans were not really happy about these pioneers,
especially
on their land,
and digging up the land to make a new canal.
Yeah, digging up their sacred land.
Yeah, that's sacrilege to the Native Americans. So
absolutely. So that was kind of a miraculous thing there, where he went on this trip as a young kid on his own to find his seer stone. But yeah, there you go. So then later he gets another seer stone in the well. That one I think everybody's familiar with.
The Sally Chase.
The well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Chase well. And Joseph Smith gets it, and he won't give it back to him.
I think one of the most shocking things I discovered on reading D. Michael Quinn is Joseph Smith stole the seer stone that translated the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
That was just, I couldn't get over that for months and months and months.
He literally did.
She wanted it back, and she let him know it, and he said, not happening. Oh, wow.
So then, now Joseph has a seer stone. Now he can actually participate in the treasure digs. And Joseph Smith Sr. said this. He said, my son Joe had seen the spirit, which he described as a little old man with a long beard, that's in quotes, who had helped the young man obtain great treasures.
Yeah.
In a paean to Masonic legend, the elder Smith prophesied that his son would bring forth a book telling the account of the antediluvians who, at the approach of the great flood, had deposited their substance in large and spacious underground chambers.
Notice that context.
There you go.
The antediluvian.
Antediluvians.
There it is, the seer stone with the lost word, the book.
Yep.
It's interesting how they all each had kind of different various shapes and holes and all that jazz. I mean, there was no set. That was the thing that kind of intrigued me when I got through Michael Quinn. Is I said, well, I mean, there's no set type of shape or kind, specific type of a mineral or whatever for a seer stone. So how the heck would you know if it worked? Well, you got to stick it in the hat and look at it for a while.
And some of them
have you ever done that, Doug? Come on, be honest. Joseph Smith said everyone ought to have a seer stone. Have you found yours yet? I have not.
I'm afraid I haven't.
I have not. No, I do know people who have been searching, though. I'm not one of them, but I do know people who are searching for them. So, good luck. It might be interesting. You never know.
You never know. So, anyway, then we we come to some of the interesting stuff. You already mentioned the trial of Joseph Smith, I think, with in the last session.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the trial, when Joseph Smith went to work for Josiah Stowell, who was a Mason.
Yeah. See, this always cropped up in this book, didn't it? All of these familiar church history personalities, and now we're all of a sudden finding like the devil has been so tricky because absolutely everybody here are Freemasons. That's amazing.
Well, we're about. If that astonished you, we're about to get really astonished because what's coming up is even more freaking unbelievable. So,
like what?
So Stowell hires him. Then Stowell, his after Joseph is out there doing his magic circles and telling him where to dig and all this other stuff, Stowell's kids become concerned that he's been bamboozled. They have Joseph arrested for being a scryer, and he goes on trial. Okay, this is the remarkable part. Okay, so this trial was remarkable, if for no other reason than the number of lodge members who became involved. Peter Goff Bridgman, the son and half-brother of lodge members Reuben Bridgman and Adna Bridgman, formally brought the charges. Local constable Philip M. Dzing, another member of Friendships, lodge number 129, took Joseph into custody, spending 2 days and one night with him before delivering him to trial. Aaron Stoll, another lodge member, testified for the prosecution. Justice Albert Neely, who presided over the hearing, was a Mason, as were the two other South Bainbridge judges, Levi Bigelow and Zechariah Tarble. William D. Purple of Green, New York, was secretary of the local lodge. Justice Neely assigned Purple to keep the minutes of the trial.
All so Masons.
Everybody involved was a freaking Mason.
All Masons. You've never read that in any church history book, have you?
Oh, no.
And they say, well, Joseph Smith was maybe he heard the word once every 8 years or whatever, but there was no influence. Oh, yeah. My gosh, every cotton picking major incident in his life was involved with Freemasons. Yeah.
Absolutely. So this he goes to trial. He's found guilty. But it's important to note that his father testifies in the trial. And
he does, yeah.
Yeah. So Joseph Sr. talks about his son's gift and that he's been praying that his gift will be used not to find filthy lucre, but for the glory of God. Okay. So that kind of, I don't know if he chose his words carefully to appeal to Masonic sensibilities or whatever when he made that statement. But anyway,
could have.
The bottom line is that Joseph, he gets found guilty, but he evidently is released. Okay.
Right.
And I think that probably had a lot to do with the Masonic connections. They did have the option back then of just releasing a prisoner and giving them a warning and telling them don't come back here for a year or something like that.
Right.
And that's kind of what most people think happened to Joseph there. But I think that now that I've read all this, it's like, wow, I think the Masonic Brotherhood kind of kicked in there and got Joseph Smith out of trouble, to be quite honest. That's what it seems like to me.
It might have been because of his father's Masonic connections. And of course, his brother, his grandfather, Joseph Jr.'s grandfather and uncle. I mean, they're not going to allow their family members to start having trouble with the law over stupid, trivial things that absolutely all of the other countryside was also doing. And all of them were also Masons doing it. So it makes you wonder, really, is this more about the seer stone and the treasure digging, or is it more of the fact that these guys were poor and so they would have been looked on as lesser then, and maybe that's why we don't have, at least as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, if you know better, we don't have a lot of court documents or legal bound texts showing all kinds of trials in that era of people being arrested for treasure digging.
Yeah,
Do we?
I don't know. I don't know that we do. I do know that we have the records for this trial.
Yes, but this is just one
but
odd out trial. It's
just,
not like that was a regular occurrence. So why were they picking on him? Yeah.
I think probably, most of the time, it seems like I read this somewhere. It might have been in Quinn's book, Magic Worldview, but I think a lot of times people were just escorted to the edge of town and said, "Look, don't come back here," But,
they could have been.
This case, in this case, you have two sons pressing charges that their father is being
duped. Yeah. That's right.
That made it much more serious. And Josiah Stowell was a pillar for that community as well. He wasn't some dumb hick farmer out
right
in the sticks. He was one of the biggies in that community.
He was one of the important ones. Yeah,
he was one a Revolutionary War hero or something like that.
Yep.
He was not a trivial member of the community. So I think that had a big influence. And then we come to just really interesting faculty of a brack. Faculty of a brack.
Yeah, the faculty of a brack. What did you think of that when you read that? Now, you were aware that Lucy? You were aware that Lucy had written that, right?
I was aware that Lucy had written that. However,
what did you ever always think of that? Well, how did you handle that?
I thought that was folk magical stuff coming from the Magus.
From the what?
That's what I thought.
From the what?
From the Magus.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the Magus. I guess that's how you say it. Magus, not Magus.
Magus is fine.
Magus. Which they considered it sort of a talisman to, for protection and that kind of thing, is to have this magical word that you could write out, and it would form kind of a little pyramid when you wrote it out in a certain way.
Here, I'll show you the picture of it.
Yeah, you be the audio visual there. But yeah, what surprised me was in her book that she wrote about Joseph Smith. This is what she says. She says, and she's talking about the rumors that they were lazy no-goods. She says, "I shall pursue another topic for a season that we adopt our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. We never during our life suffered one important interest to swallow up every obligation." Okay. Yeah, there you go. Abracadabra. So the important part here is this phrase here, trying to win the faculty of a brack. Okay. And a brack is just short for abracadabra. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So here's the deal.
I just want to point out one small detail before you give us the total deal. The faculty of a brack just happens to be the seventh line, which is a very significant number to Masons. It happens to be the seventh line in this triangle for a brack. Mm-hmm. Kind of an interesting situation. Okay, carry on.
Yeah. Certain numbers were very important Masonry, including 3 and 7 and some other ones.
Yep.
All right. So here's the
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10.
all the way up, 10 to the 100. All right. So here's the mind blower. When she says to win the faculty of a brack, she is quoting the exact wording that is in it's called the Spirit of Masonry, and it's like what do you call it? It's not a history of Masonry, but it's
a monitor or a guide, maybe.
Yeah, it's like a guide to Masonry. Yeah, a guide to Masonry. That's a good word for it.
Hey, what page are you on without a bracket?
I'm on page 43. I'm on 43. It's just before you get to the.
Look at that. We've already read 43 pages of this book in the last hour. That's incredible.
There you go. Hey, I want people to pay me for this. No, I'm teasing.
You're not too expensive, are you?
No, I'm not. So it says in here, they also concealed the art of changes, the way of winning the faculty of a brack. Okay, this is in that Spirit of Masonry book. So Lucy Mack Smith uses the word in that phrase in the exact same way that they did in Masonry. And that was like, holy crap.
Yeah, right.
That changes sort of the meaning of what she was saying there.
And notice also, notice also it's saying that on page 44, the Christian Freemason George Oliver wrote of this talismanic use of a brack to bring forth perpetual health and happiness and protection from temporal dangers. And I present you with the talisman that Joseph Smith had.
There you go.
So a brack is associated not only with health, magic, Freemasonry, but also with talismans. And that's definitely an important aspect of Joseph Smith's overall philosophy. It's like I was talking with Nick earlier, and I was asking him about was there a tie-in with, you notice on the cover that the two circles behind Hiram and Joseph, and Nick is going to pursue this further into another text on Joseph Smith, where all of these aggregates of what would you call it, spirituality, magic, whatever, talismanic, enemies will call it sorcery and evil, whatever you label it. All of this was involved in Joseph Smith's time. And we've got the evidence. That's the amazing thing. You never heard any of this in church.
Those amulets and the use of the amulets is also something that's hugely popular. And people just kind of wove together, even though they might have been a Christian and went to the Baptist church or whatever.
Yeah.
They still believed in these magical, the folk magic stuff, and they believed there were power in these talismans. Yeah. So.
And there's some of the amulets. Yep.
Yeah. People, they had carved things carved on canes. They had things carved on knife handles. They had coins they wore around their neck. People carried.
Are you reading out of Quinn? Are you reading out of Quinn?
No, I'm not. No,
I'm not. You just mentioned canes and all that, and there's the next picture in Quinn, Joseph's cane. And he had it also. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but they had these talismans everywhere.
And this one was Hiram Smith's. Hiram also had talisman, or at least something that he wore around his neck that was an amulet. So both Joseph and Hiram had it.
Well, Hiram also had the magic knife, the knife that
right there,
the magical symbols on it.
There it is.
And I actually know a lady who saw that when Elder G. Smith, the church patriarch, he used to have a lot of Hiram. He was a direct descendant of Hiram Smith.
Sure.
He had a lot of his artifacts, and she had seen that knife. She'd seen that knife. So anyway, but this this kind of blows my mind. This just shows you how pervasive this kind of stuff was back then. Yeah. It says that Fort, writing in the mid-19th century, acknowledged the talismanic use of abracadabra as an irresistible charm to avert evil, cure fevers, and dispel diseases, particularly if written in the shape of a triad, like you just showed us. Even to the point of early duelists, so if you're in a duel with somebody, being required to swear that they were not carrying such a charm.
So isn't that fascinating? Don't you wear a bulletproof vest in our day?
If they were wearing that charm, then that might make them win that duel. So
that's right.
I mean, it was super powerful mystic lore that was literally everywhere.
Yeah, all everywhere. Over the place. Yep.
So, so you see all these ideas, all these influences. The confluence of all that is, becomes entwined in Mormonism to a huge degree that I did not have any inkling of. So this has just been super fascinating to
fun to read, huh? Now you said you told me before we came on what you did instead of going further into the book. You reread chapters 1 and 2. So this basically gives our audience. We've been going about an hour. This kind of gives our audience the overall theme, the basis that not only the all pervasivity of Masonry as a philosophy, but the actual incorporation of the symbols in usable form on your canes, your knives, amulets on your neck, around your neck, etc. Stones, rings, whatever you could have to incorporate this spiritual, mystical, today we would call it superstitious, which may or may not be bad. I'm not quite sure that's actually the right way to approach it either. But this whole thing is just saturated in the Americas, the land of rationality. You've got Thomas Paine, for crying out loud, Benjamin Franklin, the author of the Old Farmer's Almanac. What are you doing being involved with mysticism and treasure digging? And yet so many people were. And it was super pervasive. Isn't that a fascinating part of this book? Now, the cool thing is, what I'd like to do with you next time, if it's okay with you, is let's get through the book. And we're not in a hurry. It doesn't matter if it's next month or whatever, in a month or so, and let's get back together and talk about it some more, because there are some real treasures in this thing, man. Yeah. When you get to the part of the first vision, I'm just telling you, as a very good friend, sit down. Because if you don't, it's going to knock you down on the first vision. And then when you get to the Book of Mormon, stay sat. And when you get to the Book of Abraham, I'm telling you, sit down. There is some real choice stuff in this book, man. You've got some fabulous materials. So I'm happy with one thing about this, Doug. I've told my audience, and I'm ranting and raving now. I'm almost becoming a raving lunatic about this, but it's exciting because it's such a good, comprehensive analysis. But now that we're getting the actual much more full context and all, it makes it more enjoyable to read this part of history, whether you're doing it with Mormonism in mind or America. That's kind of what's so fun about this book, is it opens up more than just one avenue so that we can get back interested in our American heritage. No, we don't have to practice it. No, we don't have to believe in it. but it is part of our collective heritage, and it's really fantastic to study it, isn't it? It's fun to see you're so enjoying it. So
this book is something I think that everybody should read.
yeah,
I would put it on the must read list. There's some books that are you might want to read, and there's other books that you kind of have to read. And this, to me, is because I don't think you can get a true picture of what's going on in their brains. I feel like
true.
That I just sat down with a psychologist who interviewed Joseph Smith and dug into his psyche. This is how important this book is, because this shaped the way these people think about everything. And to them, these concepts and mystical, legends and things, they were all just completely interchangeable and enmeshable with Christianity. They didn't have any problem, blending all this stuff together.
Yeah, they weren't sneaking behind the barn, practicing Freemasonry. It was right out there on the street with them.
It was right out there.
Yeah.
And you see how all this stuff came together, and it gets mixed up in this big cosmic mixer, and out the other end squirts Mormonism, and all these influences converge.
And the fascinating thing is, it's not a negative on Mormonism any more than it was a negative on the Christianity either. Isn't that fascinating? Yeah.
So I think it's essential to really understand what was going on in the minds of the people then, and
right,
and how that shaped their beliefs, how that shaped the way they acted. And I'm sure that, like you were telling me to buckle up for the rest of the book.
Oh boy,
I will do that.
Oh, dude, we have got some fun discussions for the audience to go through with this. We really do, man. It's awesome. This completely gave me an entire new mindset on the book of Abraham. And that was after I did that series of, what was it, like 20 videos, where I thought I was trying to be as exhaustive and all-inclusive as I could. I missed an entire dimension. Never even thought about it. Wait till I can't wait to get your reaction on that. We'll have some good times, some good conversations in the future. So, all right, you guys, I'm gonna head off for a little while. I've got Cheryl Bruno coming tonight, 8:00. I'm going to be interviewing her. Hopefully you can join me. If not, it's okay. It's all recorded, so you can watch it later. But I might do one more. I don't know. My wife got yelled, kind of talked to me, and she said, you're overdoing it. You're expecting too much from your audience. They don't want to watch you all day. And I said, well, it's not me. They can turn the video off and listen to it, But there is a lot of fun information to share. So if I'm not back, I will be back tonight at 8:00 Mountain Time. And I'm going to call it good for here. Doug, thank you for being on the show. It's good to talk to you as always.
Thank you, BYP.
Absolutely my pleasure. And we will do a lot more of this. We'll catch up to you just as soon as we can. We'll see you guys tonight, 8:00. I'm going to head out and go get something else done today. Woohoo! Although there's nothing as important as this.